Hello and welcome to the second series on tests in Blackboard. The series covers some of the more advanced and unusual features and functions of tests in Blackboard. This is part 2 of the 3-part series, and in part 2 we'll cover pools. We'll talk about creating a pool of questions, using question sets from a pool within a test, and using random blocks of questions from a pool within a test. Okay, we'll start here in Blackboard under our control panel, Course Tools, Test Surveys and Pools, and we'll go into Pools. I have several pools in my demo course. These pools can be exported, and it's a very similar process to exporting a test. It saves as a zip file, and then it can be imported using the import function, browsing your computer, selecting the pool export file, and submit. You'll get any error messages here in the log. Click OK, and now we have that pool of questions in our course as well. So importing, exporting, very similar to importing and exporting tests. Let's go ahead and build a pool. Because pools are groups of questions not associated with a test that can be used on different tests. You can use them on any test you want. You want to give the name, you want the pool's name to be fairly descriptive so that when you're reusing those questions on tests, you know what sort of content is in that pool so you can more efficiently find the questions that you're looking for. So for our example, we're going to call this Chapter 1 questions. Okay. And in the description box, you'd want to give maybe the book title that the Chapter 1 is referring to. That way, if your book updates in your course, then you'll know where these questions come from, and you'll know if they're still valid for your course or if they need to be changed, or if you want to use a different pool from a different book. The instructions box you can leave blank. That's just a duplicate there. It won't actually display to students. The instructions box on the test is what will display to students. So we're going to leave that blank, and we're going to click submit. Okay, so this is the pool canvas, and it's very similar to a test canvas. We can use the find function, and it's exactly the same as the find function when we're reusing questions on a test. We can also upload a pool of questions, an export file of pool questions, directly into the pool here. But we're going to go ahead and just create a question. And you would create the questions exactly the way you would when you're creating test questions. So I'm just going to create a few questions real quick. Okay, so I have a mixture of 18 different true, false, and multiple choice questions here. And you can see that they're all displaying at a default value of 2 points. Now when you add questions from a pool to a test, you do still have all the same point value setting options that you would normally have. This is just the default value that when you select them, they'll pull in at 2 points. So they'll pull in at whatever points are displayed here in the pool, and you can adjust that in the test. You can also adjust the point totals for questions within the pool right here in the pool area so that they'll default to whatever value you set. And again, if you pull them into the test and you want to change them from whatever point value is set in the pool, change it to a different point value in the test, you can do that. Okay, so now that we've looked at creating a pool, let's look at some of the ways we can use pools. So we're going to navigate back to Test Surveys and Pools and Tests, and we're going to build a test. We have our same description instructions that we always have. Here we are on our test canvas, and instead of creating a question, we're going to go into the reuse question, and we're going to start with creating a question set. So question sets are sort of halfway between random blocks and reusing individual questions. So we have the same reuse box that we have when we use the find question function, which was in the last series on tests. For our example, we're going to choose our Chapter 1 questions pool that we just created. And you can select individual test questions, or you can select all of the questions. So you have the option to narrow the selection even further using your filtering options, or simply by selecting the questions that you would like. So for our example, let's select maybe 10 questions here, and we'll click submit. Now, just like we'll see in a moment in the random blocks, we choose a number of questions to display. So I'm going to say that I want 5 of those questions. So for each test, a random 5 of those questions will be selected and will be added to the test. By clicking the questions in set box, we'll see all of the 10 questions that we selected. So it's going to be any 5 of these questions that will be displayed to each test attempt. If we decide that we don't want some of those to be possibilities in our question set, we can select them and remove them. We can also display the full text if we want to see more of the question. We can edit the questions right here, and we can add questions to the set if we've forgotten some that we want to add back. So that's question sets, and they're very helpful if you want to select specific questions, a small group of specific questions that you want a certain number to be in the test. Similar to a question set is the random block. So under the reuse question menu, let's select random block. Again, we have that same selection box. It functions just a little bit differently this time. We're going to go ahead and select that same pool. We can select all pool questions, or we can filter the selection and reduce it by question type. We're just going to go ahead and select all pool questions, and we'll get all of the questions that match that criteria, that are in that pool and are of that question type. So that's the difference between question sets and the random blocks. The random blocks pulls all of the questions from the pool that match question type criteria, and question sets lets you individually pick your group of questions that you'll have on your test. We'll go ahead and click submit. And here in our random block, again, we have that number of questions to display. So we have 18 questions because there were 18 questions in that pool of that question type. And from that, we're going to say we want 7. So we want 7 questions of those 18. And both of these are going to give you a random selection of questions from the group that you selected. It's just that the question set, you choose the individual questions, and the random block chooses all of the questions of a given type or types from that pool. Okay, so that is pools in Blackboard. We looked at how to create a pool and the similarities between the import-export functions with tests and pools. We looked at creating a pool, which is very similar to creating questions within a test, and we looked at how to use questions from a pool in a question set and a random block. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you found this series on tests helpful. And as always, be awesome.